In 1929, the US stock market lost 89% of its value in under 3 years. And by 1933, 1 in 4 American workers had no job at all. That wasn't a bad quarter. That was a civilization-level collapse, and the mechanisms that caused it are not relics of history. They are the same mechanisms quietly loading the chamber right now, in economies across the globe, while most people are too busy checking their portfolios to notice the structural rot underneath. Let's make this personal. In 2023, Germany, Europe's largest economy, officially entered recession for the first time since the pandemic, with GDP contracting for 2 consecutive quarters. The UK followed, slipping into recession by year's end. Japan, the world's third-largest economy, saw the yen crater to a 34-year low against the dollar, forcing the Bank of Japan to spend over $30 billion in a single month just to prop up its own currency. Meanwhile, China's property sector, which accounts for roughly 30% of its GDP, imploded, with Evergrande defaulting on over $300 billion in liabilities and Country Garden following right behind it. These aren't isolated events. They are symptoms of the same disease, and if you think your savings, your job, or your retirement fund is insulated from this, you need to understand what actually happens when economies don't just slow down but genuinely collapse. So let's break this down from the ground up, because most people use the words recession, depression, and collapse interchangeably, and that confusion is exactly what keeps them unprepared. A recession is the mildest form of economic contraction. Technically, it's defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. That's it. The economy shrinks, businesses earn less, layoffs tick up, consumer spending dips, and governments typically respond with stimulus, interest rate cuts, or both. Recessions are painful but normal. The US has experienced 13 recessions since 1945, averaging about 10 months each. The 2008 financial crisis was a recession that nearly became something far worse. Housing prices fell 33% nationwide, unemployment hit 10%, and the S&P 500 dropped 57% from peak to trough. But the system held. Banks were bailout out, the Federal Reserve slashed rates to near zero, and within about 6 years, the labor market had largely recovered. A recession is a wound. A depression is an amputation. A depression is not just a really bad recession. It's a fundamentally different animal. The Great Depression of the 1930s saw US GDP fall by nearly 30%, unemployment reached 25%, and deflation hit 10% per year, meaning money became more valuable while everything else became worthless. Banks failed by the thousands, over 9,000 between 1930 and 1933, wiping out the savings of millions of families overnight. The key difference between a recession and a depression is duration and depth. A recession is a cyclical downturn. A depression is a structural breakdown where the normal recovery mechanisms stop working. Interest rates can't go lower because they're already at zero. Consumers won't spend because they've lost faith. Banks won't lend because they don't trust anyone's collateral. The entire feedback loop of a functioning economy seizes up. Now, an economic collapse is something else entirely. This is when the institutional framework itself fails. Think Weimar Germany in 1923, where people needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy a loaf of bread because hyperinflation had destroyed the currency. Think Zimbabwe in 2008, where inflation hit 79.6 billion% monthly, and the central bank printed a $100 trillion note that couldn't buy a bus ticket. Think Venezuela after 2016, where GDP contracted by over 75%, hospitals ran out of basic medicine, and 7 million people fled the country. In a collapse, it's not just that the economy shrinks. It's that the medium of exchange, the rule of law around contracts, and the basic trust that holds a market economy together all disintegrate simultaneously. So what causes these events? The pattern is almost always the same, and it unfolds in stages. Stage 1 is excess. Cheap money floods the system, usually through prolonged low interest rates or massive credit expansion. Asset prices inflate far beyond their real value. In the 2000s, it was housing. In the 2010s, it was corporate debt and tech valuations. Right now, global debt sits at a record $313 trillion, according to the Institute of International Finance, which is roughly 333% of global GDP. That number alone should make your skin crawl. Stage 2 is the trigger. Something breaks. A major bank fails, a commodity price spikes, a geopolitical shock hits. In 2008, it was Lehman Brothers. In 2020, it was a pandemic. The trigger itself is rarely the real problem. It's the match dropped on the gasoline-soaked floor that was already there. Stage 3 is contagion. Because modern economies are so deeply interconnected, a failure in one sector cascades into others. Banks stop lending to each other. Supply chains freeze. Consumers pull back. Businesses that were profitable yesterday can't roll over their debt today. This is where recessions become depressions, because the credit system, the lifeblood of a modern economy, begins to coagulate. Stage 4 is the policy response, and this is where things get really interesting. Governments and central banks have two tools: fiscal policy, which is government spending and taxation, and monetary policy, which is interest rates and money supply. In a normal recession, these tools work. But in a depression or collapse, they either don't work or they make things worse. Printing money to stimulate demand when the real problem is a broken supply chain just creates inflation. Cutting rates when rates are already at zero leaves you with nothing. This is the liquidity trap that Japan has been stuck in for 3 decades, and it's the nightmare scenario every central bank in the world is quietly planning for right now. Here's what most people miss. We are not in a recession. We are not yet in a depression. But the conditions that precede both are accumulating at a pace that should alarm anyone paying attention. Global debt is at historic highs. Central banks have been raising rates aggressively to fight inflation, which increases the cost of servicing that debt. Commercial real estate is cratering, with an estimated $1.5 trillion in loans maturing by 2025 that many borrowers simply cannot refinance. The geopolitical landscape is more fractured than at any point since the Cold War, with active conflicts disrupting energy markets, shipping lanes, and food supplies simultaneously. The uncomfortable truth is that recessions, depressions, and collapses are not random acts of God. They are the predictable consequences of choices made by policymakers, by corporations, by all of us, to borrow against the future and assume the music would never stop. The music hasn't stopped yet, but the volume is getting lower, and the people who understand what comes next will be the ones who aren't standing in the dark when the lights finally go out.